mangani vakpranashchakshushrotram athabalamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakriyam mama brahma nirakaro Anirakarnameyastu, Anirakarnameyastu, Tadatmani, Nirateya Upanishadsu Dharma, Ste Mayisantu, Te Mayisantu, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May all my limbs grow strong, so also my breath, my speech, eyes, ears, and all my organs. All is Brahman, of which the Upanishads speak. May I never turn away from Brahman. May Brahman never turn me away. Let there be no turning away, at least on my side. I am engaged in the study of the self. The Upanishads speak of qualities that one must possess to succeed in such a study. May I acquire those qualities. Oh, peace, peace, peace. So, disciple, by whose will is the mind drawn towards its objects? Who makes the vital breath, the first sign of life, function? Ordained by whom do people utter words? Which God directs the eye, the ear, and the other organs? Teacher, it is Brahman. It, Brahman, is the ear of the ear, the mind of the mind, the speech of the speech, the breath of the breath, and the eye of the eye. Therefore the wise, giving up the notion that they are associated with these organs, depart from this world, in other words, renounce this world and become immortal. The eye does not reach there, nor does speech, nor the mind. We do not know how a teacher can possibly explain it to a disciple. We do not know. That Brahman is different from all known familiar objects. It is beyond even unknown objects. This is what we have heard from the ancient ones, the teachers, who explained it to us. Know that alone to be Brahman which cannot be described by speech, and by which speech becomes a vehicle of expression. It, Brahman, is not this sense world that people worship. Know that alone to be Brahman, which the mind cannot comprehend, and which they, in other words the sages, say makes the mind function. It, Brahman, is not this sense world that people worship. Know that alone to be Brahman, which one cannot see by the eyes, and by the power of which the eyes see. It, Brahman, is not this sense world that people worship. So now we come to verse 8. Yatrotena nashranoti yena shrota midam shrutam tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasate. Know that alone to be Brahman, which one cannot hear by the organ of hearing, and by the power of which the ear can hear. Yet Brahman is not this sense world that people worship. So like our other sense organs, the ears cannot perceive Brahman, because Brahman is not an object of perception. Rather, it is Brahman that gives the ears their power to hear. People take this world to be real and run after it. That is a mistake. Only Brahman is real, and because of Brahman, this world seems real. Brahman is the basis on which this whole world of name and form rests. It is like the screen on which cinema pictures are projected. And just one more verse in this first section. Yat pranena na praniti yena pranaha praniyate tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedham yadidam upasate. It says, know that alone to be Brahman, which one cannot make an object of smelling by the nose, and by the power of which the nose smells or functions. Yet Brahman is not this sense world that people worship. So the idea underlying these verses is that Brahman is not a material object that can be perceived by the senses. The sense organs cannot function independent of Brahman, who is the source of all power. Brahman is the supreme reality on which everything rests. And now we need to realize that this Brahman is ourself. We are so much obsessed with the sense world that it is difficult for us to accept that it is not real. When it is said that this world is not real, it means that it is subject to modification. According to Vedanta, that which changes is unreal, anicca. It holds that Brahman alone is real, nitya, for it never changes. If the world appears to be real, it is because it is supported by Brahman. It is to be noted that independent of Brahman, the world does not exist. Iti Kena Upanishad Pratanaha Kandaha. Here ends the first section of the Kena Upanishad. So we finished our first section, and basically what's said is start out with Kena. By whom? By whom do the senses see? By whom does the mind function? You know, by whose power is this whole universe here? And then it went through everything, all the different senses, the mind, everything. And it said that Brahman cannot be seen by the eyes, but because of Brahman, the eyes see. It can be heard by the ears, but because of Brahman, the ears can hear. And this is the basic nature of Brahman and the basic nature of our true self. Now normally we think of reality in terms of what we can experience primarily, what we can see, what we can hear, the objects that we see, and we can get knowledge about those objects. We can understand how they work, how they were created. Scientists can determine what laws determine their actions and so forth. So all of that is dealing with a world that we're looking at and that we're seeing, that we're experiencing through the senses and through the mind. But Brahman, or spiritual knowledge, is based upon the understanding or the experience, the actual conscious awareness of that which is doing the experiencing. And this is the principle behind the Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. It is stated in the 13th chapter of the Gita. Is you have the field. You have all kinds of different experiences that come. Physical experiences, things you can hear, things you can taste, and also mental experiences that come. But who is the Kshetrajna? Who is the knower of the field? Who is the knower of the experiences that come? And this is what the basic foundation of the Vedanta is on. Who are you? Who is there that makes all these things happen? Who gives the eyes the power to see? Who gives the ears the power to hear? Now, because Brahman is the source of all these things, the senses and so on, that they can't know Brahman. In other words, you can't look out and you can't see Brahman because Brahman is back here. Brahman is back in that consciousness which is projecting all this, producing all this. And the basic principle behind Jnana Yoga is simple. Is that you're the witness, the sakshi, the witness. Whatever happens, whatever you experience, good or bad or ecstatic or anything else, whatever you experience, you're just the witness of it. You're the consciousness which is aware, oh, this is happening. But you're not the experience. And this is a big difference between spiritual ignorance and spiritual knowledge. Spiritual ignorance is that the ordinary person gets so absorbed in what he's experiencing, what he's seeing and hearing, that oh, this is it, this is the real world, this is it. And this is then becomes all he knows. For example, right now, all of us have the feeling, most likely, that we are seated in this room. But actually we're not. We're seated in God. We are actually in God right this moment, but we're not aware of it. Because we're so absorbed in our physical sensations, we say, oh, I'm in this room. I'm sitting on the chair, I'm listening to a talk, I can hear the words and so on. But we don't realize that in truth, we're actually just watching this, and at the same time we're in God. We're with God, because we can't be anywhere else. Because when we say, I'm aware, it's consciousness which is saying that. We say, we think, I'm aware because the body's here, that I'm sensing what's going on, but actually that sense of awareness, that sense of identity is due to consciousness, which in its own nature is pure consciousness. When it connects to a particular body, a particular apparatus, and this is what bodies and minds are, they're an apparatus, a vehicle by which we can experience the world and we can see things and we can do things in the world. When it connects with a particular apparatus, then comes the conviction, oh, I'm this apparatus. And this sense leads to a sense that I am an individual that's separate from God and separate from everybody else. And then this gives a sense of ego. I'm this person here. Now, depending on how good or bad we are, we can be a very selfish ego and maybe do a lot of harm to other egos, or we can be a very good ego and do good things to other people. But as long as we have the sense that I'm this particular person and that is a different person and we're two separate things, as long as we have the sense that I'm here, but God's, well, He's off somewhere, off there, then we don't have the spiritual knowledge, we don't have the truth, the reality of what is actually there. And this is the whole kind of struggle, journey in spiritual life, is simply becoming aware of who you are. It said that in Greece, Socrates had the words, know thyself, over his school. And this is the essence of what Jnana Yoga, what the Vedanta has to teach, is know thyself, because when you know yourself, your true self, then you have everything else. Because that true self, that consciousness, that sense of I exist, I'm aware, that consciousness is none other than Brahman's consciousness. Now, in order to kind of grasp this, and this is where, like for most people, this is very hard to understand because it's so different than our everyday experience. Like I said, our everyday experience, we're always involved in what's going on in our daily life and what's going on outside. We always have the sense that I'm here, I'm the doer, I'm the experiencer, this is happening to me, and the strong sense that this is reality, this is the real world. We look at other things, like the mystics and so on, we say, well, that's imagination or something unreal. But in truth, that's the actual reality, and what we experience in our everyday life is more like a dream. It's something that's experienced, but it's not actually the reality. So this is the idea, is that as long as we are identifying with the instruments, as long as we're saying this experience is me, then we're confined within those experiences. Like we're confined within this room right now. But when we begin to detach from the experience and say there's an experience there, but I'm watching it, I'm just sitting here watching it, then you're slowly beginning to make a distinction. And this then begins the transformation of going from a very limited human being to being the child of God, being one with God, the source of the whole infinite universe. Because ultimately, like I said, God, Brahman, is like the ocean. We're like waves in the ocean. It's waves where it can be big and small, different shapes and all, but as ocean, there's just ocean, there's just water. In that, when you get down to the purest level of your consciousness, that's what you are, and then there's no distinction that I'm that person, not that person. And this is what remember Swami Ashokananda. He said that when a person goes beyond his absorption in the physical world, as well as his absorption in the mental world, he reaches a level where he finds that he's pure consciousness. He's a pure spiritual consciousness, not body, not mind, not thoughts, not anything else, but a pure consciousness. And he said that when a person experiences that, he realizes that his consciousness is a part of a vast, vast, infinite consciousness. And he said, though, that when he comes out of that experience, out of that samadhi, and comes back to the world, he then realizes that that same spiritual consciousness, which he was calling himself, that same spiritual consciousness is equally within everybody else. And so, for a really fully realized soul, it makes no difference if it happens to this body or that body or that body, because his consciousness is not focused, not identified with one particular body. You remember Sri Ramakrishna would never say me, or he would say, Mother brings people to this place, because he didn't consider himself to be Ramakrishna, to be this particular body. That was one. He said, his consciousness was the kind of universal consciousness, where he saw everything as ideas within the cosmic mind, and Ramakrishna was just one of those ideas, but the inner consciousness was the kind of universal consciousness. And this is kind of what we're trying to achieve. As long as there's a sense of duality, as long as there's a sense I'm one thing or something else, there's always going to be conflict. You remember a few weeks ago we read that chapter on Tree of Life. The idea that as long as there's a sense of difference between me and you, or me, or Americans and Japanese, or this, as long as there's any sense of duality, there's going to be conflict, because we're always bumping into each other. And even people who are very close, love each other very much, they'll still have frictions. They may work them out in a gentlemanly fashion, but there'll still be times, I want to go to a movie, no, I want to stay home, and like that. This is bound to happen. But when your consciousness is operating from the one consciousness, then there's no conflict, because it's all an expression of the consciousness, and that's the spiritual reality. That same consciousness which is working in the individual is working in all the individuals. And as long as we're seeing things kind of from a selfish, individualistic standpoint, then we're not in the kind of higher truth yet. Now, in other words, to understand all this, it goes back to this idea of creation that we've talked about before. We said that normally, particularly in the West, America, when people speak of creation, they normally think, well, God created the world, and then He stuck it out there, and He sits up in heaven, and He's kind of running things like sitting at a big desk. But that creation then is something that's different. God is one thing, creation is something else. But then there's the other concept of creation, which is like you find in mental creation. We said, like in the case of a novelist who creates a whole world. That whole world exists only within his own mind. But it's full of characters, it's full of all kinds of activities and plot and things going on. Now, if the characters in that novel, in that book, were conscious, and they began to ask themselves, who made me? They could look at every object, every person, every character in their world, and they won't find anybody who made them, who's God. But yet all the time, their creator is right there where they are, because they're all contained within the consciousness of the creator. It's like when we have a dream, or when we have a very vivid kind of daydream or anything, that world that's there is within our own consciousness. It's not something separate from it.
Now, when we become an ego, when we become individualized, we take like one idea in that cosmic mind, the creator, we take one idea and we center on that and say, okay, this is me. And we shut everything else out. But when you go deeper, back towards the source, you eventually begin to get back in touch with that consciousness which underlies everything. And slowly you become identified with that, and then your life, your actions, your deeds, they become in harmony with the rest of the universe, because you're not operating kind of separately. Now that capacity to connect, reconnect with our source, is available to every person. And what we call a spiritual person or a spiritual teacher or guru is somebody who's made that connection. And then he becomes completely transformed by that. Now, a person who's a good person, he may be able to help, be able to do some good, but he may also then turn and do bad. You know, it could go either good or bad, and he's also can only do good according to his own understanding, his own wisdom, his own insight, and so forth. But the person who has begun to connect with that all-pervading consciousness, then all his actions begin to gradually flow in harmony with what the divine will is. And this is then, Swami Sardana has said that the final word in spiritual life is self-surrender. We always say, I have to do it. And even when a person becomes very religious, usually, and certainly in America, they tend to think in terms of, becoming a do-gooder, doing good deeds, going out and helping the world, saving the world, and so forth, uplifting the people and so on. And that's all very good. But there comes a point, if a person begins to go deeper, where he realizes that the greatest good he can possibly do to the world is to become an instrument in the hands of God, to let that divine universal consciousness do what it wants with him and put it where it wants and let him fulfill according to the divine will. Then the whole action becomes harmonious. It becomes a part of an expression of the underlying oneness, divinity of things. And so, right now in consciousness, it tends to be, body consciousness, sense consciousness, mind consciousness, and so forth. But we have the capacity to raise our consciousness all the level until there's nothing that is not contained within the consciousness. Till the whole universe is contained within that consciousness, because consciousness in its true nature is unlimited, infinite, and it's the source out of which all of creation has come. Now, so, and the way to get that consciousness is ultimately very simple to explain, but very hard to do, which is just this idea that, you're the witness. Whatever happens is not actually happening to you. It's something that's happening to a body, it's happening to the mind, something's going on there, but there's a part of you, a level of you, that is just watching it. Just calmly watching it and seeing what happens. Now at first, for most people, this will seem pretty boring. And this is why it's very, very difficult. I know somebody who went, they did a little retreat at some Zen center, Buddhist center, and they said that was the most boring thing. Well, you just sit there, watch your breathing. I mean, and a lot of Americans, you talk about meditation, and they say, no, go out and do something, accomplish something. So for many people, this whole kind of spiritual path seems like a waste of time, because they don't know what the value is. And it seems, like I said, very boring. But as you go on with it, slowly, that inner glory, that inner divinity that's there within, gradually will start to unfold. And basically, it's like two aspects to it. One is that the world stops bothering you as much. You don't get disturbed as things. You don't get stressed. You don't get anxious about things. You just kind of let things flow, and you just calmly go with it. And you'll find once you get a little simmering that if you kind of begin to just leave it in providence or in God's hands, then whatever situation comes, you'll handle it. You'll say the right thing, you'll do the right thing, but if you get tremendously stressed out, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to solve this problem? How am I going to make this person do this? Then it all becomes a tremendous struggle and a tremendous kind of burden on you, and you don't function as well. And so, the first thing is that you start to get your balance back. And this is important because for many people, they have no idea who they are. Their mind is full of so much imaginations and desires and wishful thinking and trying to project this personality onto the world that they actually have no sense of who you are. And this is one of the first kind of signs of spiritual progress, is that you start to get a sense of foundation, that this is what I am. I'm not all these conflicting emotions and worries and fears and everything else. I'm here. This is me. Then, on that foundation, you find that everything in your life is starting to kind of calm down. Now, at the same time, though, you're not getting as excited about good things. And this is a large part of the problem, is that the people that say, okay, I'll be glad to get rid of all my problems and sufferings and things, but I don't want to get rid of all my joys and so forth. So it's kind of, tends to kind of turn people off, because they tend to equate it to indifference. That, okay, I don't care about you, I don't care about my dog, I don't care about anybody, but it's not really like that. It's letting go of the superficial kind of thing, superficial relationships, so that something deeper can begin to unfold. And this is the second aspect, is that you start to feel, start to experience that there's something operating here. You won't realize God right away, but you begin to sense, yes, there's something here. And it's good, it protects me, it can give me protection, guidance. When you connect with it, you feel, okay, I'm on the right path, yeah. And then all your worries, what should I do, what should I do, all those start to subside, and you just feel that everything is going on right, and you're on the right path, and it's like a great protecting power there that slowly begins to unfold more and more from within. And then, as that happens, you realize that you don't need anything in the outside world. You don't need money, you don't need necessary relationships, because you're finding the source of actual love, of all love, is right there within. And so your whole the whole nature of your life, of your experience, gets transformed. And instead of becoming a grabber who's always trying to find something from other people, from other things, who's always looking for somebody else to kind of fulfill their needs, you become a giver. And it's based on the idea that, okay, when you begin to realize, I've got everything here, I don't need anything. And then I don't have to depend on anybody else or anything else, the economy or anything else. Everything that I need is right here. I have this omniscient, omnipotent, all-loving power that's looking after me, that's taking care of me. Then you find instead of kind of begging for happiness from other people or other things, you begin to share what you have inside. It becomes kind of natural. So this is a complete transformation from the small little person who's always like a panhandler, always looking for something from somebody or some other experience, to like the king who has everything, and so he bestows. He doesn't bestow, but it begins to flow through him, just a natural grace and blessing and light that automatically begins to uplift people. You know, so when you become a little religious, you start to want to become good and so forth. And then you start worrying about how do I help other people. You become aware of other people and other problems and things, and how can I help them? But gradually you realize that the only thing you need to do is to be close to God. Everything else will come from that. When you have that closeness to God, you will be a blessing on everybody that comes into your presence without you trying to be. Without the ego saying, oh, I've got to straighten this person out. You just let God's kind of grace shine. It's like the sun. When the sun's there, it just shines on whoever it sees. It doesn't say, oh, I'm going to shine on this person. Oh, maybe I'll shine on that person. It just shines, and everybody else who's sensitive, who can feel it, will get the, kind of the benefit. And so, like that, your whole life becomes shifts from being egocentric, of basically starting off with me, and whether you're going to be a good person or a bad person, but basically it's all about me. It begins to shift into the me disappearing out of the way and the divine self. And this is what they're talking about. Me is self of the small s, but within each individual is self of the big S, and that big S is unlimited, but it's also not something different. It doesn't depend on a God somewhere off in heaven who just says, okay, I like you, so I'll bless you. It's all there potentially within, as we begin to kind of recognize it and to bring it out and to let it become a part of our life. So in this first chapter, it's saying, he who cannot be seen, but it's the power by which the eyes see. Because the eyes are just an instrument, and then there's something there that says, okay, I see that. With that eye that says, okay, I see that, we think, well, it's because of the body. But actually that eye is consciousness, and in its ultimate state, it is infinite, unlimited. It's the only consciousness. It's the only thing that exists, is that one vast ocean of existence, consciousness, and bliss, and then we, in our true nature, are the same as that ocean. As a human being, as an individual, we're not. As an individual, we're in expression of a very limited kind of concept of that reality. But when we go back deeper and deeper, then where the body, the mind, kind of individual self is forgotten, is then what reveals itself is the ocean, the one water, the one substance of all things. It's the substance of infinite love, infinite power, infinite wisdom. All those things are there. And when they're touched, even in a very small way, they can totally transform all your experience. So it mentions that when it speaks of the world as unreal, it means that it's anicca, it's not eternal, it's changing. And Brahman, they say, is the unchanging, that's called anicca or real. But it doesn't mean that the world is completely unreal. It means that it's something that's experienced, but it's not not ultimately real. And that, in other words, when they see the rope and think it's a snake, there's actually still a rope there. And this is what we're looking at this world. And we're actually seeing God but we're thinking, oh, it's made up of good and bad people, and it's made up of pleasant and unpleasant experiences, and all this thing. We're thinking all these things are real, but actually, what it is God Himself. Now, in order to realize that, to know that, you have to find God within yourself, and then you'll see it outside also. There's like Swami Ashokananda said, once you've had this kind of higher samadhi or experience, then you're going to know that same infinite spiritual consciousness there in everybody else too. And then your experience of the world becomes completely transformed. The real goal is not just to get into samadhi and kind of stay there. You remember the case where Swami Narayan, Swami Vivekananda, he used to beg Ramakrishna, please let me have Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So finally, Ramakrishna gave him Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And then he asked him, well, how was it? You pestered me so long, how did you like it? And Swami Narayan said, it's such a wonderful experience. I want to just stay in that state all day long, come out once in a while to get a little food, and then go back into it. And this, then Sri Ramakrishna scolded Swamiji. He said, I didn't think you were such a small person seeking your own salvation. I thought you would be like a big banyan tree, giving shelter to thousands. He said, this Nirvikalpa Samadhi is a small thing, but there are things, beyond that. And so this is the idea is that you go in, you get your meditation, you get balance, you begin to develop your own inner capacities, your own inner powers, your own connection with the divine. But then you come out, and the rest of your day is expressing that. And you see gradually more and more of the kind of the divine is coming into your daily life also, and being everything that is getting transformed. So the meditation is like you go to the gym, you work out, but you don't go to the gym just so you can spend all day in the gym. The idea is you go, and because when you work out, you get stronger, you get more energy, then the rest of your day goes a lot better. And like that, in meditation, you get some calm, some peace, some balance, and some inner kind of power and things. And then the whole rest of your day is live happily and beneficially. You do good. There's a plaque on the windowsill in the office that I don't know where it's shown. It's a quote from Swami Vivekananda that said, the calmer our nerves, and the less we disturb will be, the better our work will be, the more we will love, and the better our work will be. In other words, the calmer our nerves, the less disturbed we are, the more loving we will become, and the better our work will be. People are naturally good. They're natural expressions of the divine love, but it gets blocked, it gets buried, it gets covered up by all kinds of other things and doesn't get through. But this thing is that when you begin to calm down and start to get back into your natural self, what's going to come out gradually is going to be love and just happiness and joy and peace, and you'll be happy, and you'll also tend to make other people happy. What we are the children of God, the children of immortal bliss, but we've become buried in forgetfulness. Like a person with amnesia, we've forgotten who we are, and then we're just kind of wandering around here, not knowing what we're doing, and fumbling around, and this is, you look at the world, and this is what's going on. Because everybody's just kind of fumbling around in the dark, and very few people have any idea that, I'm a divine being, and so is everybody else. But the person, the mystic or the saint who has that consciousness, he uplifts everybody, all of humanity, the consciousness of all humanity. It just, this Swami Vivekananda said that the incarnations, the God-men and so forth that we hear about are just a small number. He said, always. There have been God-men who we've never heard of. They just sit in a cave somewhere or somewhere you're not even aware that they exist. But he said, because of these great souls that have always been on earth, because of that, all of mankind has been uplifted. If it was not for them, we would have descended to the levels of the animals. It's the human consciousness can get into darkness so far that it just thinks only purely in animal terms, of survival, of getting what I want, and so on. But anyone who kind of attains the light, he then kind of spreads that light, and it has a tendency to uplift everybody. He doesn't have to preach, he doesn't have to write books or anything else. He just, by being that, then it benefits the whole world because it's coming out of the kind of the one consciousness thing. There's a statement in the Bible that 10 righteous men can save a city. Now, which only a small number of people with actual God knowledge or spiritual knowledge have the capacity to uplift the whole world. And so that's, like I say, it's not the purpose of it, but it's kind of a side effect, it's an outgrowth of it. So if anybody, realizes their own true self, they become kind of a tremendous force. They achieve actually the goal of life. The goal of what they're trying to do is to realize God, to become reunited with God. And this is ultimately the purpose behind everything. And what we're all people searching for is to get back reunited with God. And so, but along with that, then everything else will come because that self, that divine presence that's within, it is unlimited source out of which everything else has come.
Swamiji, I have a question. You refer to Socrates. You mentioned about Socrates. I was thinking about it. When he was a great philosopher in Greece, he used to tell his students, as you just mentioned, that know thyself. And yet he found that the judges of that time in Greece, they said that he's corrupting the minds of the youth at that time. And hence he was given a death punishment by offering him a cup of poison to drink. And he drank. And he died. Now my question is, did Socrates, when he said to his students, know thyself, did he teach them how to know thyself? Did he give them the method?
It's interesting. He taught most about what was known as the Socratic method of asking the questions, drawing them out. But he drew philosophy and all. I don't think they did yoga and things. I don't know. There's not any mention of that.
Right. My feeling is that had he told them how to know thyself, probably he would have evaded or avoided that death punishment.
Well,
and
actually,
he could have convinced the people. Because the people of that time, Maharaji, they were more conscious of their physical and mental environments. Everything was associated with that one, with history, economics, politics, social, etc. They were somehow not aware of the other world or the supreme consciousness or even the concept of God. So when he said, and I remember he told one of his, when he was given death punishment, a cup of poison was handed over to him. One of his disciples stood up and said, Socrates, how should we bury you after your death? And Socrates smiled and said, "First catch me
Yeah.
before you
You
ask
can
me.
bury me. Yeah.
First you catch me.
Yeah.
After I die, then you bury me as you do usually with the rest of the world.
Mm.
But first catch me."
Yeah.
When I read that sentence, "catch me," I think he meant his consciousness, the
Mhm.
Atman.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my second question is that where did he get this idea at that time, which he was not able to convey to the people of Greece, that know thyself? Where did this idea come to him? It
Yeah.
was a very novel idea, very fine idea at that time.
Yeah,
It was
why-
completely new,
Mhm.
and with the rest of the world did not understand it.
Yeah. We see further back you go into Greek philosophy, the more Vedantic it is, like Pythagoras, Socrates, others. Later on, with like Aristotle, so it became more Western, logical, scientific kind of oriented. But when you go back into the early Greek philosophy, there's some very Vedantic ideas there, and it's quite likely. Well, Alexander the Great, he went to India. He was in India. He met sages there. There's also, I read that some sages were seen down in Egypt, other places like that. So in other words, there were some interconnections, communication between India and Greece and other places, and that may have been the source of the ideas. That
Socrates' point, I kept on remembering, thinking about it, that had he given his students this idea how to know thyself,
Yeah.
probably he could have avoided this problem.
But look at
And-
Christ. Look at him.
and
Says
similarly-
he didn't do him anything.
And exactly, similarly, I was coming to that one.
Yeah.
Same thing after that one, Jesus Christ had the same problem. When he felt that know thyself, and he was teaching the at that time the people of that area was teaching, he came across and confronted the same problem. People rebelled against him, and Romans and other people, they punished him, gave death punishment. And when he was being put on the cross, and he said, "They know not what they are doing to me." And that is very true. They did not know what they were doing to him. That they thought, at that time, people thought only physical thing. They are giving physical punishment. But I still keep on thinking, why these great philosophers or the knowers of God, who knew who they are, could not convince the people of that time that how to know ourselves. The method.
Yeah. You see, there's no expression that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And the fact is, when somebody brings spiritual knowledge, and particularly the spiritual light or upliftment, most people, many people, they react against it. They don't want the light. They don't want the spiritual knowledge, and it can bring a lot of kind of negative reactions to it, because their mind is set in a certain groove. We know this in practical things. Anytime you introduce a change into people's lives, they usually get upset, whether it's a business or something else. A new boss comes in, he wants to do things differently. Everybody's up in roars for a while because they're used to the old way of thinking. But a scientist who discovers something really new, all the other scientists say, "I didn't learn that in school." There's a big battle. I like that. The human mind, human consciousness tends to reject any teaching that says, let go of your humanity, your spirit. They tend to fight it, and they tend to. In Greece, they had kind of their official religion with their polytheistic gods and goddesses and things like that. In Israel, in Jerusalem, and all, they had the priests, the scribes, and their orthodox rituals and ways of thinking. And then when Christ said, destroy this temple in 3 days, I will build it, and they said, that's blasphemy. And like that, then they crucified him.
And this tends to be the human reaction to things. Particularly when a particular person becomes public. Like I said, if somebody's just sitting, kind of bringing this lady out quietly, people aren't likely bother him. But to say, John of the Cross, one of the great mystics, he was tortured by the Inquisition. Teresa Avila, his sister, first time she had samadhi, they almost buried her because they thought she was dead, She was just there. All I got was set to bury her, and her father saw her eyelid blink a little bit. But then she came out of that, and she was transformed. She went from being an ordinary girl to being the same. But like I said, Christ said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. Because He knew. They just didn't have a clue. And so it's like they were... and that's the whole world. It's full of people without a clue.
I kept on reading, Maharaji, this Greek philosophy, Socrates, Plato, and other people. This question is always in my mind, that this very unfortunate thing which happened to him, the great philosopher, and this thing, I could find some answer somewhere in some books. Did he ever answer that question to his disciples, to his students? And I don't find. I asked many people also that why didn't he answer that question? Maybe this Maharaji consciousness that when we speak about, it is not something very concrete, not tangible, not physical. People in general life, we find that this is a chair, it's a physical thing, concrete thing, and they see it. Whereas consciousness, it cannot be seen by our senses. I do not know whether we feel it or not. Even mentally, we do not comprehend that one. I think it was that important reason was there, that physically and mentally, since it cannot be concretized, comprehended, that's why people think that this is a dream.
Well, yeah, and that is exactly what we are reading here, that know that alone to be Brahman, which cannot be described by speech, and by which speech becomes the vehicle of expression. It is not this sense world that people worship. In other words, for everybody, 90%, this sense world is what's real.
Yes.
And all this kind of vague thing. It's only, and this is the whole problem about the spiritual life, is that the world, the sense world, is very real, and it then dominates completely our experience. And also for most people, the things they've been taught by their parents, by growing up, by their peers, other things, these become truths to them. And it may be totally prejudiced, or anything else. It could be all kinds of distorted things, but usually it becomes so kind of deep that they think, oh, this is true. They don't question, and they don't question the reality of the senses or anything else. And this is why most people, we live in ignorance. And when a person goes to higher thing, people tend to say, "Oh, he's just crazy. He's having delusions or something." Yeah, because they just don't have any comprehension of it. Things have changed, though. In America, things have changed tremendously since the '60s in terms of openness to some higher things. But before that, I mean, nobody meditated. Nobody had any idea of this inner. Nobody did yoga. Nobody even heard of yoga. And if anybody who did, like some of the early Vedantas now, their husbands or wives or things were saying they needed a psychiatrist because they wanted to sit and meditate, you know. So like that, it's now everybody in America, it's become general knowledge. Gurus and yogas and karma and all these things have become part of the American culture, and so there's quite a changes come.
Even Swami Vivekananda had this similar problem when he came at the Parliament of World Religion. Yeah. After that Parliament lectures, Maharaj, he went to Detroit. I was reading one, and one American gentleman told him, he was from rural area or from big cities. He told Swamiji, had you said this thing what you are talking about now, 50 years ago in America, they would have killed you.
Yeah.
they would have killed him. But now we tolerate that. So it means over a period of time, there has been a understanding, or there's a feeling that there is some reality, there is some truth to what Swamiji mentioned or what Vedanta says.
Right.
Before that, people did not
No,
understand.
and it's kind of the material covering becomes so thick that they just can't think of anything else. You know,
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Anyway. So we finished on the first section here. Come down section 2. It's about 4 sections, 3 or 4. But this is the theme of the Upanishad. Is just that by who is all these things happen, and by whose power do the eyes operate? But the difference in the thing is that because Brahman is the source of all experiences, it can't be experienced in itself because it's the one doing the seeing, and so it can't be seen by the eyes, but it's aware of what the eyes are seeing and so forth. So, any questions? Okay. Then Sunday, I don't know for you, the people here, the film group, they're from Parliament of Religions. They're filming like worship in the different traditions. So it's then Sunday, I think Swami is going to talk. We have regular Sunday talk on why we should meditate. In the afternoon, he's going to Glendale or someplace else to give a talk. And then next week, he'll be doing the retreat at Ganges. And I'll be doing the Sunday service that weekend. And but the retreat is only going to be is going to end early on Sunday morning.
Yes.
He's going to do the class from 7:30 to 8:30 and then leave because he has to go to New York to meet Modi, to meet the Prime Minister. That the Council General Assembly wanted, insisted that he come there and meet him, so that's where he's going. So he'll do the retreat and then jump on a plane, go to New York again and meet Modi, and then come back again. And then October 2nd, which is not too far away now, is going to be Durga Puja. And I think Swami wants to do some kind of inauguration down in the basement then too. We'll see. Okay. And we have the yoga class going on, the Sanskrit class, and all that. Om Asato Ma Sagyamya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamya Vidyurma Amritam Gamya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. And lead us from death to immortality. Om peace, peace, peace.